Hello world and welcome to Learning Java one byte at a time. This is video 6 in a tutorial series geared at bringing the wonderful wide world of Java to those with little or no programming experience. Now we have so much to cover in this video that it's time to get down to brass tacks. We're going to go ahead and jump right into our Notepad application. We're going to pick up where we left off before with the greeting class. And down here I have a couple of notes outlining what we'll be covering. There might be too much content for one video. We might have to stretch this over 2 videos, but I'm confident that you all will be fine picking up on it. And so let's see what we're going to be covering. In the video here, we're going to be introducing array objects. We're going to talk about how to construct them and how to instantiate them and how to reference their elements through indexes. We'll also be talking about the integer variable. It's a numeric variable and when and why you'd use that over the other numeric variables. We'll talk a little bit about the scanner object, how to construct that, and how we're going to use that to get user input. Then we're going to write a user interface function, which is going to display a very simple text menu that will solicit the user for their choice of input. We're going to take whichever input they pass, and we're going to pass that through to the greet function as the index for the array that we've written. And so quite a bit of material to cover, so let's dive right in. First thing I want to point out is you'll notice that we have these double forward slashes before my comments, and the feature of the double forward slash is that it tells Java that anything that follows it is going to be a comment, and Java won't try to interpret it or parse it as code, it simply ignores it. So aside from using it to be able to leave comments and documentation throughout your code, it's also a nifty way to tinker with your code by turning lines of code on or off. So we're going to start by commenting out this declaration of 3 string variables from before, because why use 3 string variables when I can simply use a single string array? And that's going to be declared as such. We'll make it static. We'll tell Java that it's not a string variable, but by using the brackets, tell it that it's a string array. We're going to give it the name greetings because it's going to have all 3 greetings. And because this is an object and not a variable, we need to tell Java that it needs to create us a new one. This is the construction of it. And we do that by setting it equal to a new array type of string, and then telling Java how many elements it has, which in this case will be 3, because we have 3 greetings. Each one of these literal strings of text is going to be an element as a string variable in this array of 3 string variables, which is an array object. So one thing about the array is that it is what's known as immutable. It's not something that can change size throughout the program. So you'll need to know the size of the array when writing the code. One of the reasons that this is the case is because Java is very conscientious of memory, and it's also easier to sort through an array when you know from the outset how large it is. There are a few array types that are mutable, that is, they can change length mid-code, but for the scope of this program and for the conservation of memory, we're going to go ahead and go with the basic array type. But that's okay because we actually know in advance that there are 3 objects, and so there's no need to use anything more advanced than the basic array object. So that being said, we'll go down here to the main method and we're going to comment out these 3 assignments, because rather than assigning to these 3 separate string variables, we're going to actually assign each element individually to the string array object that we've created, and we'll do that like this. Now, you may be wondering why it is that I've referenced the elements in the array with 0, 1, and 2 instead of 1, 2, and 3. And that's another quirk of Java. The nature of the array is that the first element is the 0th element. And so an array of length 3 will always have elements 0, 1, and 2. And so that being said, we have then these 3 literal strings of text saved as string variables, which are now elements with indexes in this single greetings array object, which we were able to construct at the declaration right here. So now, when we call our greet function, which is expecting a string variable, rather than pass in this previous string variable known as greeting French, we're going to pass in the array object with an index, and that's going to be the reference to the string variable we're looking for. So that can be done, as you might guess. And if we want French, we're going to pick index 2 because that's where the French greeting is. And if we execute the code just like this, we'll actually get the exact same output. It will simply print to the screen, Bonjour le monde. And so now that's pretty cool in and of itself, but we can make this even cooler. So let's go ahead and design our user interface. Let's go ahead and write a new method, a new function. We'll call this one display UI. And the nature of this function is it's just going to make a simple little text menu and display to the screen, and it's going to ask for the user input from one of the selections. And this method can be public, it can also be static, and since it's not going to be returning anything, we don't need to evaluate it. We can make it a void method, and we'll call this one display UI. Common nomenclature. Display UI. It also doesn't need any parameters because there's nothing that's going to change the way that it works from the outside or anywhere in the program, and so we're not going to pass through anything. We're just going to leave the parameter set empty, but we will need the braces in order to open up the body of the method and begin writing the functionality. Alright, you can probably guess how this menu will appear after this is executed, although you may be wondering why I've chosen to include 2 blank calls to the println function, one right here and one right here. The reason is that the println function has the characteristic that after it prints the text, it also does a carriage return. And so simply for the aesthetics and the formatting of this menu, making it look nice, I'd like to have a space above it and a space below it. And so by calling the println function but not passing through any text, it's going to do a carriage return right here. It will print this, then a carriage return, then print this with a carriage return, then print this with a carriage return, and then do one more carriage return before we finally solicit the user for input. And so now we're at the point to where we need the user to make a selection. In order to do that, we're going to need to get input, and in order to get input, we're going to need to use the scanner object. Now the scanner object is not part of the core Java functionality. We're going to have to actually import that. We're going to have to actually reach out to an external library and make a call to bring that object into our code. And the way that we're going to do that is outside of the class greeting. We're going to make a call to import, and this one happens to be in the Java library in the util folder, and it is called scanner with a capital S. Now, I could just as easily import the entire Java folder without having to make these extensions. Or I could import the Java utility folder and everything else included with that, including the scanner. However, why import something you're not going to use? It's going to bog down your program with unnecessary libraries, and it's going to make the program run a lot slower. And so be very, very concise and very, very specific with what you're importing, and don't import anything you're not going to use. And so if I only need the scanner object, I'm going to be very, very intentional in making sure that I just import scanner from just the utility folder, from just the Java library. And that way I'm only pulling the features into my code that I need and nothing that I don't. This will matter later on when the code gets longer and things like runtime and memory become an issue. So now that I've imported this scanner object, it will be something that I can use inside this class greeting. But I'm still going to need to declare my own instantiation of the scanner object. And the way that you do that, just like the string array object, is going to be like this. It's going to be static. It's going to be a scanner. I'm going to name this one user input. That's a name of my choosing. And just like the string array, I need to ask Java to construct a new one right here and now. And so I'm going to do that by setting it equal to the keyword new. It is in fact a scanner, and the scanner actually does have parameters. It's expecting to know what it's scanning. In this case, I want it to scan the system, not .out, but .in, like so. And so it's a little bit counterintuitive the way that it's set up, but once you actually get an intuition for what we're doing and how Java has this set up, you'll see that it's actually a really elegant way to write code, and it makes it extremely easy to be nimble and flexible later on. It's just something that you sort of have to get an intuition for. It doesn't happen right away, but after you use it for a few times and after you get some more experience writing the code, you'll see that this is actually a really clever way to set up the way that they write their code. So now that we've actually declared, we're going to have a scanner object that's going to be static to the greeting class that we're going to call user input, and go ahead and build it for me now based on scanning the system in. We can then use our user input to perform all of the functionality that the scanner object normally has. So that's about enough for this video. I don't want to overwhelm anybody. If any of that wasn't clear, go ahead and use the comment section to message me and we'll work it out together. Otherwise, I hope that this was informative, and I can't wait to see you all back in the next video. Thank you so much, and you all have a wonderful night.